7 years ago, she loved a man who vanished without explanation, leaving her heart in pieces on the cobblestones of Florence. Today, Tina Hayes steps into the glass tower of Blackwood Enterprises as the new executive secretary, ready to rebuild her life in Manhattan's glittering corporate world. But when the elevator doors open to the CEO's floor and she sees him, Morgan Blackwood, the ghost who haunts her dreams, standing behind his desk in a $1,000 suit, her carefully constructed armor shatters. He's more powerful, more devastating, more impossible than ever, and the diamond ring on his left hand tells her everything she needs to know. He's engaged to someone else, but the way he's looking at her right now, that hasn't changed at all. The early morning light cut through Manhattan like liquid gold, painting the steel and glass towers in shades of amber and rose. Tina Alessandra Hayes stood on the corner of 5th Avenue and 52nd Street, her reflection caught in the polished windows of Blackwood Enterprises. 53 floors of power, prestige, and promises she'd made to herself about starting over. At 28 years old, she'd learned that life rarely offered second chances. But here she was, holding one in her perfectly manicured hands. The building stretched toward the September sky like a cathedral to modern ambition. Through the revolving doors, she could see the lobby. Italian marble floors, a waterfall cascading down one wall, fresh white orchids arranged in crystal vases on the reception desk. Everything whispered of money, influence, and the kind of success that demanded perfection. Tina smoothed the fabric of her tailored navy dress, simple, elegant, expensive enough to belong but not so flashy as to draw unwanted attention. Her natural hair was styled in soft, professional curls that framed her face. Diamond studs, a gift from her grandmother, glinted at her ears. She looked every inch the executive secretary to one of Manhattan's most powerful CEOs, if only she felt as confident as she looked. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, her breath forming a small cloud in the cool morning air. New job, new beginning, new life. The last 7 years had been a masterclass in survival. After Florence, after him, she'd rebuilt herself piece by painful piece. Art gallery curator to corporate assistant wasn't the trajectory she'd imagined during those golden afternoons in Italian museums. But it paid the bills and kept her in New York, close to the vibrancy and anonymity she craved. Blackwood Enterprises wasn't just any company. It was an empire built on innovation, luxury real estate development, and a reputation for ruthless excellence. Landing this position had felt like winning the lottery. The salary alone was double what she'd been making. The benefits package included things she'd only dreamed about, and the CEO, Morgan Blackwood, was a legend in Manhattan business circles. Brilliant, demanding, impossibly private. She'd researched him, of course. You didn't walk into a job like this without doing your homework, but the photos online were carefully curated corporate shots. A handsome man in expensive suits, usually photographed from a distance at charity galas or business summits. Dark hair, strong jawline, eyes that even through the camera lens seemed to hold secrets. She'd never seen him up close. Tina pushed through the revolving doors, and the lobby enveloped her in cool, perfumed air. The click of her heels on marble echoed like a heartbeat as she approached the reception desk. "Good morning. I'm Tina Hayes, the new executive secretary for Mr. Blackwood." The receptionist, a striking woman with platinum blonde hair pulled into a severe bun, looked up with a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome to Blackwood Enterprises, Ms. Hayes. Take the private elevator on the right to the 53rd floor. Ms. Chen will meet you there." The private elevator was all mirrors and brushed steel, rising so smoothly she barely felt the movement. Tina watched her reflection multiply infinitely in the mirrored walls. 7 years ago, she'd been a different woman, younger, more naive, still believing that love conquered all and that promises whispered in moonlight were meant to be kept. Florence had taught her otherwise. The elevator chimed softly, and the doors opened to reveal a reception area that redefined luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Central Park, the green expanse stretching north like an emerald ribbon through concrete and steel. The furniture was mid-century modern, pristine white leather sofas, sculptural chrome accents, fresh peonies spilling from geometric vases. A petite Asian woman in her early 40s approached with an efficient smile. "Ms. Hayes, I'm Susan Chen, Senior Executive Assistant. Welcome to the executive floor." "Thank you. It's beautiful up here. Mr. Blackwood has exacting standards." Susan's tone suggested this was both a warning and a point of pride. "Let me show you to your desk. You'll be stationed just outside his office. He's in an early meeting downtown, but he'll return around 9:30. I'll orient you to his calendar, preferences, and protocols before he arrives." Tina's workspace was positioned like a guardian at the gates of power, a sleek glass desk with dual monitors, a leather chair that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and a clear view through glass doors into the CEO's office beyond. Even empty, the office commanded respect. A massive desk dominated the space, its surface almost bare except for a slim laptop and a single photograph in a silver frame, too far away to see clearly. Behind it, windows offered an even more spectacular view than her own. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with leather-bound volumes and architectural models. Abstract art, bold slashes of color and emotion, decorated the other walls. "He's very particular about his coffee," Susan was saying, pulling Tina's attention back. "French press, dark roast from a specific supplier in Brooklyn. The beans are in the kitchenette, labeled with his name. Never instant, never from the machine downstairs. He takes it black exactly 7 minutes after brewing, no more, no less." Tina took mental notes, her fingers flying over her tablet as Susan rattled off dozens of details. Morgan Blackwood's schedule was color-coded by priority: red for board meetings, blue for client calls, green for personal appointments, which were rare. He preferred emails to phone calls. Meetings were scheduled in precise 30-minute or 60-minute blocks. Lunch was usually eaten at his desk while working. "He's demanding but fair," Susan continued. "If you're competent, organized, and discreet, you'll do well. The last secretary lasted 4 years before moving to our London office as a director. Mr. Blackwood rewards loyalty and excellence." "And if you're not competent?" Tina asked. Susan's smile turned slightly sharp. "You won't last long enough to find out." At 9:25, Susan glanced at her watch. "He'll be here in 5 minutes. He's never late. I suggest you have his coffee ready." Tina moved to the kitchenette, her hands steady despite the flutter of nerves in her stomach. This was it, the real beginning. She measured the coffee beans, ground them fresh, poured the hot water. The rich, dark aroma filled the small space. She watched the clock, counting down the minutes. 7 minutes exactly. She poured the coffee into a pristine white cup, one of a set that looked handmade, ceramic art rather than corporate china, and carried it carefully back to her desk. At 9:30 precisely, the elevator chimed. Tina looked up, professional smile ready, prepared to meet her new boss. And the world stopped. Morgan Alexander Blackwood stepped into the reception area, and every molecule of oxygen vanished from Tina's lungs. Time didn't just slow, it shattered, spinning her backward through 7 years of carefully constructed distance. It was him. The man from Florence, the man who'd held her in moonlit piazzas and whispered forever against her skin. The man who'd disappeared without a word, without a trace, leaving her heart bleeding on cobblestones halfway across the world. He stood there in a charcoal grey suit that had been tailored to perfection, his dark hair slightly longer than the corporate photos suggested, curling just slightly at his collar. His skin was a warm olive tone, and those eyes, God, those eyes, were the same stormy grey that had haunted her dreams for 7 years. He looked older, harder. The boyish softness she remembered had been replaced by sharp angles and controlled power. But it was unmistakably him. Morgan's gaze swept the reception area with practiced efficiency, then stopped, froze, locked on her face. She watched recognition hit him like a physical blow. His expression, carefully neutral a second before, cracked just slightly. Shock, disbelief, something darker and more dangerous underneath. Tina! Her name fell from his lips like a prayer and a curse combined. The coffee cup trembled in her hands. She set it down carefully on her desk before she could drop it. Mr. Blackwood. Her voice came out steadier than she felt, years of rebuilding herself, lending her a strength she didn't know she possessed. Your coffee. 7 minutes, black, as requested. For a moment, they simply stared at each other across the elegant office space. 7 years of silence stretched between them like a chasm. 7 years of unanswered questions. 7 years of moving forward while looking backward. He moved first, closing the distance between them with the controlled grace of a man used to commanding rooms. Up close, she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the slight silver threading through his temples. He smelled like expensive cologne and something underneath that was purely him, a scent memory that slammed into her with devastating accuracy. What are you doing here? His voice was low, controlled, but she could hear the tremor beneath it. I work here, as of today. I'm your new executive secretary. That's impossible. And yet, here I am. His jaw tightened. Tina, we need to... Mr. Blackwood, your 9:45 is waiting in conference room A. Susan's voice cut through the tension like a knife. She appeared from her own office, tablet in hand, completely oblivious to the emotional earthquake happening in front of her. The Dubai investors for the Harbour Point project. They're on a tight schedule. Morgan didn't take his eyes off Tina. Cancel it. Sir, this meeting has been scheduled for 6 weeks. They flew in specifically. Reschedule. The command in his voice left no room for argument. Tell them something urgent came up. Offer them dinner tomorrow night at Per Se, my treat. Full apology. Susan's eyes widened slightly. Clearly this was unusual, but she nodded. Of course, Mr. Blackwood. He turned back to Tina. My office now! It wasn't a request. Tina followed him through the glass doors, her heart pounding so hard she was certain everyone on the 53rd floor could hear it. He closed the door behind them, didn't slam it. His control was too precise for that, but the quiet click felt as final as a gunshot. They stood on opposite sides of his massive desk, the Manhattan skyline sprawling behind him like a backdrop in a play about ambition and loss. 7 years, Morgan said finally, his voice rough. 7 years, and you show up here how? I applied for a job. I was qualified. They hired me. I had no idea you were... She gestured at the office, at him. This, any of this. You didn't know my name. Morgan Blackwood is a very different name than Morgan Cross. She threw the name back at him, the name he'd used in Florence, the name she'd whispered and cried and cursed for years. Tell me something. Was anything about you real, or was the broke graduate student just another lie? Pain flickered across his face. It was real. Was it? Tina's control cracked, anger flooding through 7 years of grief. Because real people don't vanish. Real people don't ghost someone they claim to love. Real people don't leave notes that say, I'm sorry, and nothing else. Tina, if I could explain, you had 7 years to explain, Morgan. Or should I call you Mr. Blackwood now? Keep it professional? He flinched. Don't. Don't what? Don't be hurt? Don't be angry? Don't stand here looking at the man who destroyed me and feel absolutely nothing. I never wanted to hurt you. Well, congratulations on failing spectacularly. Silence fell between them, heavy and suffocating. Through the glass walls, Tina could see Susan tactfully pretending not to watch, while clearly watching everything. Morgan moved to the window, his back to her, shoulders tight. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "You can't work here." "Excuse me. It's not we can't. This is impossible, Tina." Hot fury replaced the grief. "Are you firing me on my first day, before I've even started? I'm trying to protect—" "If you finish that sentence with you, I'm going to scream." She moved around the desk, forcing him to face her. "I don't need your protection, Morgan. I needed it 7 years ago in Florence, when I spent 3 months thinking you were dead in a ditch somewhere, because you couldn't be bothered to give me a real explanation. I needed it when I cried myself to sleep every night, wondering what I'd done wrong. I needed it when I had to rebuild my entire life around the hole you left behind. You don't understand? Then make me understand." The words burst out of her, echoing in the pristine office. "Make me understand why the man I loved enough to give up everything for couldn't even give me the truth." Morgan's eyes met hers, and for a moment she saw the boy from Florence, young, passionate, real, buried beneath the corporate armor. "Because I loved you too much to let you follow me into hell." Before she could respond, before she could process what that meant, the office door opened. "Morgan, darling, surprise!" A woman glided in, tall, blonde, impossibly elegant in a cream Chanel suit. Her smile was perfect, her jewelry understated but clearly worth more than a car. "I convinced Jean-Georges to squeeze us in for lunch, and She stopped, blue eyes landing on Tina with the precision of a predator spotting prey. "Oh, hello, you must be the new secretary." Her tone made secretary sound like servant. Morgan's entire demeanor changed, shutting down like a steel door slamming closed. When he turned to the woman, his expression was professionally pleasant, but distant. "Victoria, I didn't realize you were coming by." "It's Tuesday, darling. We always do lunch on Tuesdays." Victoria moved to his side, her hand possessive on his arm. The diamond on her left hand caught the light, 3 carats at least, emerald cut, blindingly beautiful. Engaged. He was engaged. Victoria Ashford, Senior VP of Acquisitions. She extended her hand to Tina, the gesture somehow managing to be both polite and dismissive. "And you are?" "Tina Hayes, Executive Secretary to Mr. Blackwood." "How lovely. Welcome to Blackwood Enterprises." Victoria's smile sharpened. "Morgan does go through secretaries rather quickly. I hope you'll last longer than the previous ones." "The previous ones left for promotions," Morgan said quietly. "Of course they did." Victoria laughed, the sound like crystal breaking. "Come, darling. I have so much to tell you about the Foundation Gala. The caterer is being absolutely impossible." Morgan's eyes found Tina's across the office. In them, she saw apology, regret, and something that looked dangerously like longing. "We'll continue this conversation later, Ms. Hayes." "Of course, Mr. Blackwood." She watched them leave together, power couple, perfect couple, engaged couple. Victoria's hand remained on his arm, claiming marking territory. Tina sank into the chair behind her desk, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. 7 years. She'd spent 7 years moving forward, building a new life, convincing herself she was over him. One look and the entire carefully constructed fortress crumbled. Her phone buzzed. A text from Susan. "Welcome to Blackwood Enterprises. Baptism by fire is our specialty. Coffee's in the kitchenette if you need something stronger than water." Tina allowed herself 30 seconds to feel everything, shock, fury, grief, and underneath it all, the ember of something she'd thought long dead. Then she stood, smoothed her dress, and opened Morgan's calendar on her computer. If Morgan Alexander Blackwood thought one emotional confrontation would make her quit, he'd forgotten who she was. She was Tina Alessandra Hayes. She'd survived Florence. She'd survived him. She could sure as hell survive being his secretary. But as she stared at his schedule, color-coded, precise, utterly devoid of anything personal except Victoria's name appearing repeatedly, one thought burned through her mind. Why did he leave? What hell was he talking about? And why, after 7 years of silence, did the way he looked at her make her feel like maybe, just maybe, the story wasn't finished after all? The first week at Blackwood Enterprises passed in a blur of controlled chaos and carefully maintained distance. Tina learned the rhythms of Morgan's world, the relentless pace of conference calls with London and Tokyo, the razor-sharp precision of his decision-making, the way he could reduce a boardroom full of executives to silence with a single glance. She also learned how to exist in the same space as her ghost without falling apart. It helped that Morgan seemed equally committed to maintaining professional boundaries. Their interactions were brief, efficient, almost painfully polite. He never mentioned Florence. She never asked about Victoria. They moved around each other like dancers who'd forgotten the choreography but still remembered enough not to collide. But the undercurrent was always there, electric, dangerous, impossible to ignore. By Thursday afternoon, Tina sat at her desk reviewing the Harbour Point development proposal for Morgan's 5 o'clock meeting when her phone buzzed. A text from Celeste in Paris, where it was already nearly midnight. "How's the fancy new job? Are you living your Devil Wears Prada fantasy yet?" Tina smiled despite herself and typed back, "More complicated than that." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "Complicated how? Spill. Can't. Not yet. Talk this weekend?" "You better. Love you, ma belle." Tina set down her phone and glanced through the glass doors into Morgan's office. He stood at the window, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand braced against the glass. Even from here, she could read the tension in his shoulders. 7 days of watching him had taught her things she wished she didn't know, that he rubbed his temple when a headache was coming, that he took his coffee black at 9:30 but switched to espresso after 3, that he smiled rarely and laughed almost never, except in the calculated way powerful men laugh during negotiations. That sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, he looked at the photograph on his desk, the one she still couldn't see clearly, with an expression that made her chest ache. "Ms. Hayes?" Susan appeared at her desk, tablet in hand. "Mr. Blackwood needs the Q3 projections for Harbour Point. Also, Victoria called. She'll be stopping by at 4:30. Something about the foundation gala seating arrangements." Of course she would. Victoria had been by the office every day this week, usually with some transparent excuse. Each visit was a performance, perfectly timed kisses on Morgan's cheek, casual touches that claimed ownership, pointed reminders about their engagement party next month. And each time Tina felt something dark and unwelcome twist in her stomach. "I'll pull the projections," Tina said, "and I'll make sure the conference room is available if Miss Ashford needs it. She won't use the conference room. She prefers his office." Susan's tone was carefully neutral, but something in her eyes suggested she'd noticed the tension. "Word of advice? Don't take Victoria personally. She's territorial with all of Morgan's assistants. The last secretary quit after 6 months specifically because of her." "I thought the last secretary got promoted. The one before that." Susan lowered her voice. "Victoria had her transferred to our Alaska office in January." Before Tina could respond, Morgan's office door opened. He stepped out, phone call finished, and his gaze immediately found hers. For a moment, barely a second, his professional mask slipped, and she saw exhaustion, stress, and something that looked like longing. Then it was gone. "Ms. Hayes, the Q3 projections." "Pulling them now, Mr. Blackwood." She opened the file, sent it to his computer. They'll be on your screen in 30 seconds. Also, Ms. Ashford will be arriving at 4:30. Something flickered in his expression. Resignation, maybe. Thank you, and I'll need you to stay late tonight. The contracts for the Dubai investors need to be reviewed before tomorrow's video call. It'll probably take until 8 or 9. Of course. Their eyes held for a moment too long. Then Morgan turned and retreated to his office, closing the door behind him. Susan watched the exchange with knowing eyes. Complicated indeed, she murmured, so quietly Tina almost didn't hear. At 4:30 precisely, Victoria glided off the elevator in a rose-colored dress that probably cost more than Tina's monthly salary. Her smile was luminous, her diamond engagement ring catching every light in the reception area. "Tina, you're still here? How dedicated!" She didn't wait for a response before breezing past toward Morgan's office. "Is he available?" "He's finishing a call with—" But Victoria was already opening the door, already inside, already claiming space that wasn't hers to claim. Through the glass, Tina watched Victoria circle Morgan's desk, perch on the edge, cross her legs. Watched her lean in, say something that made Morgan's jaw tighten, watched her hand trail down his arm in a gesture that was both affectionate and possessive. Tina forced her attention back to her computer screen. Not your business. Not your place, not your man, except he had been once, in another life, in another country, when they'd been different people with different names. The memory hit without warning. Florence, 7 years ago, their first night together, after weeks of circling each other at the Uffizi Gallery, where she'd been doing a summer internship, and he'd been researching for his supposed graduate thesis in Renaissance art. "Tell me something true," she'd whispered, lying in his tiny apartment with moonlight spilling through the shutters. "I've never felt like this before." Morgan Cross, that's what he'd called himself, had replied, his fingers tracing patterns on her skin, "Like I'd burn down the world just to keep you warm. That's dangerous. You're dangerous." He'd kissed her then, slow and devastating. "You make me want impossible things." "Like what?" "Like forever." Matt, Tina's hands stilled on the keyboard. Forever had lasted exactly 3 months and 16 days before he vanished, leaving only a note that said, "I'm sorry," and a hole where her heart used to be. "Tina," Susan's voice pulled her back to the present. "You okay? You look pale." "I'm fine, just tired." "Working for Morgan will do that to you. The man doesn't seem to need sleep." Susan paused, then added carefully, "For what it's worth, I've worked here 8 years. I've seen him with Victoria for 2 of those years, and I've never seen him look at her the way he looks at you." Before Tina could respond, before she could process that bomb, Morgan's office door opened. Victoria emerged alone, her expression satisfied. "Tina, darling, be a dear and order flowers for Morgan's mother. It's her birthday next week. Something extravagant. Charge it to his personal account." Of course. What kind of flowers does she prefer?" Victoria waved a dismissive hand. "You're his secretary. Figure it out. That's what you're paid for." She swept toward the elevator, leaving a cloud of expensive perfume in her wake. Tina counted to 10, then 20, forcing down the anger. Through the glass, she could see Morgan standing at his window again, shoulders rigid. She picked up her phone, composed a professional message. "Ms. Ashford requested flowers for your mother's birthday. Do you have preferences for type and arrangement?" His response came 30 seconds later. "My mother passed away 4 years ago. Victoria knows this." Oh. Tina stared at the message, something cold and sharp settling in her chest. She typed carefully, "I'm very sorry for your loss. I won't order flowers." The reply was immediate. "Thank you." "And Tina? She does that. Tests people. Don't let her get to you." "Noted." She set down the phone, a dozen questions burning through her mind. But before she could spiral into analyzing Victoria's psychological warfare, her computer pinged with an incoming video call. Morgan's face appeared on her screen. He was calling from his office, 20 feet away. "Miss Hayes, can you come in? I need to go over the Dubai contracts." "Of course." She grabbed her tablet and entered his office. The sun was setting over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet. Morgan had loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves. There was a weariness around his eyes that made him look more human, less untouchable. "Close the door," he said quietly. She did. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Morgan gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit, please." Tina sat, spine straight, professional armor firmly in place. "I owe you an explanation," Morgan began. "You don't owe me anything." "Tina, Mr. Blackwood, with respect, what happened 7 years ago is personal. This is professional. Let's keep them separate." His laugh was bitter. "We both know that's impossible. Then maybe I should resign." "No." The word came out sharp, almost desperate. He took a breath, controlled himself. "No, you're excellent at this job. Susan says you've learned in a week what usually takes a month. The clients like you. The staff respects you. I won't let my past mistakes cost you this opportunity." How noble. "It's not nobility, it's guilt." He ran a hand through his hair, destroying its careful styling. "You want to know why I left Florence? Why I disappeared? I did 7 years ago. Now I'm not sure it matters. It matters to me." He stood, moved to the window. When he spoke again, his voice was low, almost defeated. "My name isn't Morgan Cross. It was once my mother's maiden name. But my real name is Morgan Alexander Blackwood, son of Alexander Blackwood, founder of Blackwood Enterprises. Heir to a fortune I didn't want and a legacy I couldn't escape." Tina's breath caught. She'd researched the company, knew the history. Alexander Blackwood had been a titan of industry, ruthless and brilliant. He'd died 5 years ago in a private plane crash. "When I met you in Florence," Morgan continued, "I was hiding, running from my father, from expectations, from a life that felt like a gilded cage. For 3 months, I got to be Morgan Cross, broke graduate student, nobody special. Just a man in love with an incredible woman. Until my father found me, showed up at my apartment one afternoon while you were at work. Gave me an ultimatum. Come home immediately. Take my place in the company. Marry the woman he'd chosen for me, Victoria, or he'd destroy you." The words hung in the air like shattered glass. "Destroy me? How?" Tina whispered. "You were applying for curator positions. He had connections at every major museum in America and Europe. One call from him, and you'd be blacklisted. Your art history degree would be worthless. Your career would be over before it started." Morgan's voice cracked. He had proof too, fabricated evidence of academic dishonesty, forged emails. He'd prepared everything. He said, "If I really loved you, I'd let you go, give you a chance at the life you deserved." Tina stood, legs shaking. "So you just believed him? Didn't fight?" "I was 28 years old, and he was Alexander Blackwood. He'd crushed Fortune 500 CEOs. What chance did I have?" Morgan turned to face her, and the pain in his eyes was raw, devastating. "I had 12 hours to disappear from your life, or he'd ruin yours. So I took the coward's way out. I left a note, got on his private jet, and spent the next 7 years hating myself. You could have told me. We could have faced him together. And watch him destroy you, watch you lose everything you'd worked for because you loved the wrong man." He shook his head. "I couldn't, so I made a choice. I came back to New York, joined the company, let him control my life, including Victoria. You're engaged to her because your father wanted you to be? I was engaged to her because my father wanted me to be. He died 4 years ago. The engagement should have ended then, but... He stopped, looked away. But what? But she threatened to sell a story to the press, about my time in Florence, about you. She'd had me followed, had investigators dig up everything, one call to the tabloids, and your name would be splashed across every gossip site in America. Your privacy gone, your reputation questioned. I couldn't let that happen, so I stayed engaged, stayed trapped. Tina sank back into the chair, her mind reeling. Why are you telling me this now? Because you asked. Because you deserve the truth, and because, his voice dropped, because seeing you again made me realize I've been living half a life, playing a role, and I'm so damn tired of it. Silence stretched between them. Outside, Manhattan glittered with a million lights, a city of dreams and broken promises. Victoria knows, Tina said slowly. She knows who I am. The moment she saw you, yes. That's why she's been here every day, marking territory. She's afraid, Morgan said quietly. And when Victoria's afraid, she's dangerous. Tina stood, moved to the window beside him. They stood there, not touching, both staring out at the city. What do you want from me, Morgan? I want... He stopped, started again. I want you to understand why I left. I want you to not hate me. And I want... His hand lifted, almost touched hers, then fell. I want things that aren't mine to want anymore. She turned to face him. Up close, she could see the silver at his temples, the fine lines that grief and stress had carved around his eyes. He looked like a man who'd won everything and lost the only thing that mattered. I spent 7 years building a life without you, she said softly. 7 years convincing myself I was over it. Over you. Are you? The question hung between them like a held breath. Before she could answer, before she could think, her phone buzzed with an emergency alert. Susan's voice came through tight with concern. Mr. Blackwood, the Dubai investors moved the call up. They're conferencing in 5 minutes. Reality crashed back. Morgan straightened, his mask sliding into place. We'll continue this later. Get the contracts ready. Of course, Mr. Blackwood. But as Tina moved toward the door, he caught her wrist, gentle, barely a touch. Tina, I know I have no right to ask this, but please, stay. At Blackwood Enterprises? Yes. But also, his thumb brushed over her pulse point just once, stay in my life. Even if it's only like this, I can't lose you again. She pulled away, heart hammering. You don't have me to lose. But they both knew it was a lie. The Dubai call lasted until nearly 10 at night. By the time Morgan finally disconnected, the office was empty except for the two of them and the night cleaning crew making soft sounds in distant hallways. Tina saved the final contract revisions and stood, gathering her things. Her feet ached, her head throbbed, and her heart felt like it had been through a battlefield. I'll call you a car, Morgan said, reaching for his phone. I can take the subway. Tina, it's 10:15 at night. Let me do this one thing. She was too tired to argue. Fine. Thank you. They rode down in the elevator together, alone, surrounded by mirrors that multiplied their reflections infinitely. Morgan stood carefully on one side, Tina on the other, an ocean of space between them. For what it's worth, he said as they descended through the sleeping building, you were always the best thing that ever happened to me. Florence was the only time I was ever really happy. The elevator chimed, doors opening to the marble lobby. Were you happy? Tina asked. Or were you just hiding? He didn't answer. Outside, a black town car waited at the curb. The driver opened the door for her, and she slid into the leather interior. Through the tinted window, she watched Morgan stand on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, looking lost in his $1,000 suit. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Victoria. We should talk. Lunch tomorrow? My club, 1 o'clock. Tina stared at the message as the car pulled into traffic, carrying her away from Blackwood Enterprises and the man who still held pieces of her heart she'd thought long buried. Tomorrow, she'd face Victoria. Tomorrow, she'd decide what to do with Morgan's truth. But tonight, as Manhattan blurred past the window and the driver navigated toward her small apartment in Brooklyn, Tina allowed herself to remember Florence, the weight of Morgan's hand in hers. The way he'd looked at her like she was art and oxygen combined, the promises they'd made under Tuscan stars, and she allowed herself to wonder, just for a moment, just for tonight, if maybe some stories didn't end where you thought they did. If maybe some loves were worth fighting for, even 7 years later, even if it meant going to war with a woman in Chanel who had everything to lose. Victoria's club occupied the top 3 floors of a pre-war building overlooking Central Park. The kind of place where memberships were inherited, not purchased, and where the waiting list was measured in decades rather than years. Tina arrived at 12:55 on Friday afternoon, dressed in a charcoal grey sheath dress and her grandmother's pearls, armour disguised as elegance. The maitre d' led her through rooms filled with oil paintings and hushed conversations to a table by the window where Victoria waited, looking like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine in ivory silk and gold jewellery. "Tina, how prompt. I admire punctuality." Victoria's smile was all teeth, no warmth. "Sit, please. I've already ordered for us. The Dover sole here is divine." Tina sat, accepting a menu she wouldn't be allowed to use. Around them, Manhattan's elite lunched on inherited wealth and carefully maintained power structures. "Thank you for meeting me," Victoria continued, her tone pleasant, conversational. "I thought it was time we had a chat, woman to woman. About Morgan, of course." Victoria took a delicate sip of her white wine. "You see, I've done my research on you, Tina Alessandra Hayes. 28 years old, art history degree from Columbia, spent a summer in Florence 7 years ago. Quite the coincidence, don't you think?" "I don't believe in coincidences." "Neither do I." Victoria's smile sharpened. "Which is why I know exactly who you are and what you were to Morgan. Or should I say, what you were to Morgan Cross." The waiter appeared with their first course, oysters on ice, garnished with mignonette sauce. Tina didn't touch them. "Let me be direct," Victoria said, squeezing lemon over an oyster with surgical precision. "I know Morgan told you his little sob story. Poor, trapped prince, forced into an engagement by his terrible father. Very Romeo and Juliet, very tragic." She paused to eat the oyster, her expression never changing. "What he didn't tell you is that I saved his life." "Saved his life?" 4 years ago, after Alexander died, Morgan spiraled. Depression, they called it. I called it a complete breakdown. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped caring about the company his father built. "Do you know what happens to empires when the emperor stops caring?" Victoria's blue eyes were ice. "They crumble. Competitors smell blood. Investors panic. Billions of dollars, thousands of jobs, all hanging by a thread." Tina's hands clenched in her lap. "What does this have to do with—" "I pulled him back from the edge. I ran the company while he recovered. I protected his reputation, managed the press, kept everything together. And when he finally surfaced, when he finally came back to himself, I asked for one thing in return, that he honor the commitment he'd made, that he marry me. So you're holding his mental health crisis over his head." "I'm reminding him that loyalty matters." Victoria set down her fork with precision. "He owes me, Tina, and more than that, he needs me. I know this company inside and out. I know every board member, every investor, every skeleton in every closet. Without me, Blackwood Enterprises would have died with Alexander." The main course arrived, Dover sole as promised, perfectly plated. The fish stared up at Tina with dead eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" Tina asked quietly. "Because I see the way he looks at you, like you're oxygen and he's drowning, and I need you to understand something." Victoria leaned forward, her voice dropping to just above a whisper. "I have worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to lose him to a ghost from Florence. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to do your job, cash your very generous paycheck, and keep your distance. And in return, I won't destroy you." "Destroy me how?" "I have resources you can't imagine, darling. Within 24 hours I could have stories circulating about inappropriate relationships with supervisors, questions about how you really got this job, hints about your interesting past in Italy. Columbia might start wondering about the authenticity of your degree. Museums might receive anonymous tips about character concerns. Victoria's smile was beautiful and terrible. Your career in art, in culture, in anything that requires reputation, gone. Poof, like it never existed. Tina's blood ran cold. It was Alexander's playbook, perfected and wielded by someone even more ruthless. "Or," Victoria continued, cutting a perfect bite of fish, "you can be smart, stay professional, remember your place, and everyone wins. You keep your job, your reputation intact. Morgan and I have a beautiful wedding in 6 months at the Met. You'll be invited, of course, purely professional courtesy, and life goes on." "Does Morgan know you're threatening me?" "Morgan knows I protect what's mine. That's why he loves me." Victoria dabbed her lips with a linen napkin. "Or will learn to eventually. Love is overrated anyway. Partnership, loyalty, shared ambition, that's what builds empires. That's what lasts." Tina stood, her chair scraping against marble. "Thank you for lunch, and for your honesty, but you should know something about me, Victoria. I don't respond well to threats." "Then you're not as smart as I thought." Victoria's expression didn't change. "Sit down, Tina. Finish your fish. Running away won't change reality." But Tina was already walking, heels clicking across marble, past tables of women who'd perfected the art of beautiful cruelty, past portraits of men who'd built their fortunes on other people's backs. She didn't stop until she reached the street, where autumn air hit her face like a slap. Her phone buzzed. "Morgan, where are you? We have the strategy meeting for Harbor Point in 20 minutes. She typed back with shaking hands. "On my way. Traffic." The lie tasted bitter. The rest of Friday passed in a blur of meetings and carefully maintained composure. Morgan looked at her with questions in his eyes, but Tina kept her mask perfect, her responses professional. If he noticed something was wrong, he didn't push. By 6 o'clock, when he finally told her she could leave, Tina felt like she'd aged 10 years in a single day. "The Foundation Gala is tomorrow night," Morgan said as she gathered her things. "At the Met. I'll need you there." "I'm your secretary, not your date." "You're my executive secretary, which means representing Blackwood Enterprises at major company events. It's in your employment contract." "Susan will be there too, coordinating logistics." He paused. "Please, Tina, I know Victoria got to you today. Whatever she said plenty. And you know what? She's right about some of it. You do owe her. She did save your company, and I'm just—" Tina stopped, swallowed the emotion threatening to break free. "I'm just someone from your past who should have stayed there." "You're not. Good night, Mr. Blackwood." She left before he could see her cry. The Metropolitan Museum of Art had been transformed into a fairy tale for Manhattan's elite. The Temple of Dendur glowed under artful lighting, the ancient Egyptian sandstone reflecting in the shallow pool like captured moonlight. Women in couture gowns glided through galleries where million-dollar art hung as casual backdrop. Men in tuxedos discussed mergers over champagne that cost more per bottle than most people's monthly rent. Tina stood near the Greco-Roman statuary, nursing sparkling water and feeling wildly out of place despite the emerald silk gown she'd borrowed from Celeste's last collection. The dress was stunning, off-shoulder, form-fitting, with a slit that suggested elegance rather than provocation. She'd swept her hair into a low bun, her grandmother's diamond studs her only jewelry. She looked like she belonged. She felt like an imposter. "Ms. Hayes." Susan appeared at her elbow, resplendent in navy chiffon. "You clean up well. That dress is gorgeous." "Thank you. So do you. I've been doing this gala for 8 years. Pro tip, stay near the hors d'oeuvres. Avoid the board members' wives after their third cocktail. And never, I repeat never, get cornered by Carlton Whitmore from acquisitions. The man is a walking HR violation." Susan grabbed a passing canapé. "Oh, and stick close to me. These events can get political." As if summoned by talk of politics, Victoria appeared at the top of the museum steps like a vision from a dream. Her gown was champagne-coloured silk that clung to every curve, diamonds dripping from her throat and ears, and on her arm, devastating in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, was Morgan. They descended together, a couple straight from a society magazine. Flashbulbs popped, heads turned, whispers rippled through the crowd. Tina's breath caught despite herself. Morgan looked like he'd been carved from marble by some Renaissance master, all sharp lines and controlled power. His hair was perfectly styled, his bow tie exactly straight. He smiled at something Victoria said, the expression practiced, polished, completely empty. Their eyes met across the crowd. The smile fell from his face like a dropped mask. Victoria noticed immediately. Her hand tightened on his arm, her own smile sharpening as she followed his gaze to where Tina stood. For a moment, something dangerous flashed in those ice-blue eyes. Then she was all gracious hostess again, pulling Morgan toward a cluster of donors, claiming his attention, his time, his presence. "Well," Susan murmured beside Tina, "this is going to be an interesting evening." The gala proceeded with choreographed elegance, speeches about the Foundation's charitable work, funding arts education in underserved communities, restoring historical buildings, supporting emerging artists. Victoria gave a particularly moving speech about the importance of preserving beauty for future generations, her hand resting possessively on Morgan's arm throughout. Tina watched from the shadows, cataloguing every touch, every smile, every moment of their perfect performance. By 10 o'clock she needed air. The sculpture garden was nearly empty, most guests preferring the warmth and glamour inside. Ancient Greek and Roman statues stood sentinel in the darkness, illuminated by subtle uplighting that turned marble into something alive. The October night was cool, carrying the scent of dying leaves and possibility. Tina stood before a statue of Aphrodite, goddess of love, and wondered what the ancient Greeks would make of modern romance, contracts masquerading as commitment, threats disguised as lunch, love buried under layers of obligation and fear. Running away or just hiding? She turned to find Morgan standing in the garden entrance, hands in his pockets, bow tie loosened. Without Victoria attached to his arm, he looked younger, more like the man from Florence. "Needed air," Tina said. "It's suffocating in there." "Yes, it is." He moved closer, stopping just beyond arm's reach. "Victoria told me about your lunch. Did she tell you she threatened to destroy my career if I don't stay away from you?" His jaw tightened. "She told me she'd clarified expectations. Is that what we're calling blackmail now? Clarifying expectations?" "Tina, she's right, though. About you owing her. About her saving the company." Tina turned back to Aphrodite, unable to look at him. "About me being a ghost who should have stayed in Florence." "You're not a ghost." "Then what am I, Morgan?" She spun to face him, emotion finally breaking through. "What am I to you, your secretary, your ex, the one that got away? Some romantic what-if you can pine over while marrying someone else?" He closed the distance between them in 3 strides. "You're the woman I've loved for 7 years and never stopped loving. You're the reason I wake up every morning and the reason I can't sleep at night. You're the only real thing in my entire carefully constructed, perfectly controlled, absolutely miserable life. You're engaged. I'm trapped." "Then get untrapped." Her voice echoed off stone and marble. "Walk away, end it. Choose something real for once instead of whatever this is. And watch her destroy you. Watch her burn down everything you've worked for. Maybe I'm stronger than you think. Maybe I can survive her threats. I can't take that chance." His hand lifted, cupped her face with devastating gentleness. "I lost you once because I was trying to protect you. I won't lose you again the same way." "Then you'll lose me by doing nothing, by choosing her, by staying in a cage you have the key to." They stood there, inches apart, 7 years of longing compressed into the space between breaths. Inside, the gala continued. Music, laughter, the clink of champagne glasses celebrating beautiful lies. "I can't," Morgan whispered. "I want to. God knows I want to. But I can't." Tina kissed him. She'd meant it as goodbye, as punctuation on a sentence that had been hanging unfinished for 7 years. As proof that some things, no matter how much you loved them, couldn't be salvaged. But the moment their lips met, goodbye became something else entirely. Morgan made a sound low in his throat, surrender and relief and 7 years of starvation. His arms came around her, pulling her close, one hand threading into her hair, while the other pressed against the small of her back. She melted into him, into the familiar, unfamiliar taste of him, into the memory of Florence and the reality of now. The kiss was everything, desperate and tender, fierce and gentle, ending and beginning all at once. It tasted like champagne and regret, like lost time and possible futures. His thumb traced her jaw, her hands fisted in his tuxedo jacket, and for 30 seconds, maybe 60, maybe eternity, nothing else existed. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Morgan rested his forehead against hers. "Tina, I know. We can't. I know. But God help me, I don't want to stop." "Neither do I." A sound behind them, fabric against stone, a sharp intake of breath. They sprang apart to find Victoria standing at the garden entrance, her phone held up, its camera light still glowing red. "Well," she said, her voice glacial, "isn't this interesting?" Morgan's face went pale. "Victoria, don't!" She lowered the phone, but the damage was done. Whatever she'd captured was already saved, already weaponized. "I gave you one chance, Tina, one. Stay away, do your job, and we'd all be fine. But you just couldn't help yourself, could you?" "It was my fault," Morgan said. "I kissed her." "Oh, darling, I saw who initiated that kiss." Victoria's smile was venomous. "Don't worry, I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. I had such high hopes that we could all be civilized about this unfortunate situation." "What do you want?" Tina's voice was steady, even as her heart hammered. "Monday morning you'll tender your resignation." "Personal reasons? Taking time to pursue other opportunities, whatever corporate speak you prefer, and then you'll disappear from Morgan's life. Again." Victoria moved closer, her perfume overpowering in the cool air. "And if you don't, this video, along with a few others my investigator has compiled of your private moments with my fiancée, goes public. TMZ would love it. Aspiring social climber seduces engaged CEO. Very scandalous. Very career-ending." "You can't," Morgan started. "I can, and I will, unless Tina does the smart thing." Victoria's gaze locked on Tina's. "What's it going to be? Your pride or your future?" Tina looked at Morgan, saw the anguish in his eyes, the helplessness, the same trapped desperation that had sent him running from Florence 7 years ago, saw him preparing to sacrifice himself again, to make another deal with another devil to keep her safe. And something inside her snapped. "No," Tina said. "I'm sorry." Victoria's eyebrows arched. "I said no. I won't resign, I won't disappear, and I won't let you blackmail me into giving up something I earned fairly." Tina straightened her spine, channeled every ounce of strength her grandmother had taught her. "Post your video, tell your lies, do whatever you think will destroy me. But I'm done running, and I'm done letting people like you, people like Morgan's father, control my life through fear." "You're making a mistake," Victoria said softly. "Maybe. But it's my mistake to make." Tina turned to Morgan. "And you need to decide who you want to be. The man your father created, living in a gilded cage, or the man I met in Florence, who said he'd burn down the world just to keep me warm." She walked past Victoria, past the ancient statues bearing witness to modern tragedy, back into the gala where music still played and champagne still flowed, and no one knew that war had just been declared in the sculpture garden. Susan found her near the coat check. "What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," Tina said, accepting her rap. "I just picked a fight with the devil in Chanel." "Oh, God, Victoria. She has a video of me kissing Morgan. She's threatening to leak it unless I quit." Susan's eyes went wide. "What did you say?" "I told her no." "You—" Susan grabbed her arm, pulled her into a quiet corner. "Tina, are you insane? Victoria doesn't bluff. When she threatens something, she follows through. She'll destroy you." "Probably." Tina smiled, and it felt wild, reckless, free. "But I'm so tired of being afraid. I'm tired of other people deciding what I deserve. And I'm really tired of letting bullies win." "What are you going to do?" "I have no idea, but I'm done running." Tina pulled on her wrap, and if Victoria wants a war, she's about to learn I'm not as easy to break as she thinks. Behind them, the gala continued in blissful ignorance. Somewhere in those glittering crowds, Victoria was probably already planning her next move, and somewhere Morgan was making choices that would determine all their futures. But as Tina walked out into the October night, hailed a cab back to Brooklyn, she felt something she hadn't felt in 7 years. She felt like herself again, and whatever came next, scandal, ruin, or redemption, she'd face it standing up. Monday morning arrived with all the subtlety of an execution. Tina walked into Blackwood Enterprises at 8:45, spine straight, head high, wearing a crimson dress that felt like armor and war paint combined. The security guard at the front desk gave her an odd look, sympathy mixed with something that looked like pity, the first warning sign. The elevator ride to the 53rd floor felt longer than usual, each second stretching like taffy. When the doors opened, Susan was waiting, her face pale, her professional composure cracking at the edges. "Tina, thank God. I tried calling you. My phone died. What's wrong?" Susan pulled her aside, voice dropping to a whisper. "Victoria was here at 7 this morning. She went straight to the board with allegations of corporate espionage. She's claiming you've been leaking confidential information about the Harbor Point development to competitors." The words hit like a physical blow. "That's insane. I would never—" "I know, but she has evidence. Emails from your account to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. Encrypted files transferred to an external server. Bank deposits totaling $50,000 that appeared in your account over the past 2 weeks. Susan's eyes were desperate. "Tina, it's all fabricated. It has to be, but it looks damning." Tina's mind raced. Victoria had promised to destroy her. She just hadn't expected the attack to be this swift, this thorough, this devastating. "Where's Morgan?" "Emergency board meeting, 8th floor conference room. They've been in there since 7:30. Susan hesitated. Security has been instructed to escort you out if you try to enter. On whose orders? Victoria's. She's acting chairwoman while the board investigates. Of course she was. Tina moved to her desk, her former desk probably, and saw that her computer had been locked, a red warning screen flashing. Access denied by administrative order. Her personal items, a photo of her grandmother, a small succulent plant, her favorite pen, had been placed in a cardboard box. Already erased. Already gone. I'm not leaving, Tina said quietly. Tina, they'll call the police. Let them. She sat in her chair, folded her hands on the desk, and waited. The board meeting lasted until nearly 11 o'clock. Tina watched through the glass walls as executives filed out, their expressions grave. Victoria emerged last, perfectly composed in a black suit that probably cost more than Tina's monthly salary. Triumph barely concealed beneath professional concern. Their eyes met across the reception area. Victoria's smile was razor-sharp. Then Morgan appeared, and Tina's breath caught. He looked like he'd aged a decade overnight, exhausted, furious, barely holding himself together. His tie hung loose, his hair disheveled from running his hands through it. When he saw Tina sitting at her desk, something cracked in his expression, relief and anguish and desperate determination. "Ms. Hayes," Victoria's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "You're still here. How unfortunate. Security, please escort." "No." Morgan's voice was steel. "Nobody touches her." "Morgan, darling, the board has made their decision. I don't care what the board decided." He moved to stand between Tina and Victoria, his body a wall, a shield. "You fabricated evidence. You framed an innocent woman, and you did it to manipulate me." Victoria's mask slipped just slightly. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" "I have 7 years of watching you operate. I have 4 years of knowing exactly what you're capable of when you want something." His voice dropped, became dangerous. "And I have Jamie pulling your financial records right now. Care to explain the $200,000 payment to a private investigator specializing in digital forensics? The same investigator who's known for creating evidence for high-profile divorce cases." For the first time since Tina had met her, Victoria looked uncertain. "You can't prove anything," she said, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. "Maybe not today, but I will. And when I do—" Morgan stepped closer, and Victoria actually retreated. "When I do, I'll make sure every board member, every investor, every person in Manhattan society knows exactly what you are. A manipulator, a blackmailer, someone who was willing to destroy an innocent woman to maintain control over a man who never loved you." "Never loved me?" Victoria's laugh was brittle. "Morgan, I saved you." "You exploited my grief. There's a difference." He pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. The engagement ring. "This is over, Victoria. The engagement, the manipulation, all of it. I'm done being your prisoner." He handed her the box. She stared at it like it was a bomb. "If you end this, I'll release the video," she said softly. "The one of you kissing her in the sculpture garden. I'll make sure everyone sees it, your reputation, the company's reputation. Release it." Morgan's voice was calm, final. "Post it everywhere. I don't care anymore. Because here's what you never understood about me, Victoria. You saw a broken man you could control, but I was never broken. I was just waiting for a reason to fight back." He turned to Tina, and the expression on his face made her heart stop. It was the look from Florence, open, honest, completely unguarded. "And she's my reason." The silence that followed was deafening. Tina could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of every person on the 53rd floor watching this moment unfold. Victoria stood frozen, the engagement ring box clutched in her hand, her perfect composure finally shattered. "You're making a mistake," she whispered. "The only mistake I made was waiting this long." Victoria looked between them, Morgan standing protective and determined, Tina sitting at her desk like she owned it, the space between them crackling with something Victoria could never manufacture or control. Then she did something Tina never expected. She smiled. It wasn't her usual calculated smile. It was something sadder, more human. "You really do love her," Victoria said quietly. "All this time I kept thinking if I was perfect enough, powerful enough, useful enough, you'd eventually feel for me what you feel for her." She set the ring box on Tina's desk with careful precision. "I should have known. You can't compete with a ghost, or with the real thing once she comes back to life." She turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About the evidence, the threats, all of it. When you're afraid of losing everything, you do terrible things." Her eyes met Tina's. "I hope you're worth it." Then she walked to the elevator, spine straight, head high, every inch the powerful woman she'd worked so hard to become. The doors closed, and she was gone. The aftermath was chaos. Jamie Sullivan appeared within minutes, laptop in hand, already working to dismantle Victoria's fabricated evidence. The board convened another emergency meeting. Legal got involved. HR launched an investigation into Victoria's conduct. Morgan pulled Tina into his office, closed the door, and for a long moment just looked at her. "Are you okay?" he asked finally. "I don't know, am I still employed?" "You're not just employed. Once we clear this up, and we will, I'm recommending you for a promotion. VP of Cultural Development, it's a new position. I'm creating it specifically for you." Morgan. "You have an art history degree from Columbia. You spent years in galleries. You understand culture, aesthetics, how to blend business with beauty." He moved closer. "And more than that, you deserve it. Not because of us, not because of Florence. Because you're brilliant at what you do." Tina sank into the chair across from his desk. "You just ended your engagement, in front of witnesses. The press is going to have a field day. Let them. The board might force you out." "They won't. I own 51% of the company. My father made sure of that." He knelt in front of her chair, took her hands in his. "Tina, I spent 7 years in a cage of my own making. 7 years choosing duty over happiness, obligation over love. I'm done. Whatever comes next, scandal, gossip, corporate drama, I'll face it. But I won't face it pretending to be someone I'm not anymore. What if I'm not ready?" The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "What if 7 years is too long? What if we're different people now and Florence was just a beautiful dream that can't survive in the real world?" Morgan's thumb traced circles on her wrist, right over her pulse point. "Then we figure it out, together. No more running, no more hiding, no more letting other people write our story." "Your mother," Tina said suddenly. "Victoria told me to order flowers for her birthday. You said she passed away 4 years ago." Pain flickered across his face. "Breast cancer. She fought for 2 years. My father, he didn't handle it well. Neither did I. That's when the depression hit, when Victoria stepped in. I'm sorry. I wish I'd been there." "So do I, every day." He stood, pulled her to her feet. "But you're here now, and I know I have no right to ask this after everything, after Florence, after the lies, after 7 years, but I'm asking anyway. Give me another chance. Let me prove I'm not the coward who left you. Let me show you who I can be when I'm not hiding." Tina looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who'd broken her heart and the man who'd just burned down his entire carefully constructed life to defend her. At Morgan Cross and Morgan Blackwood, 2 halves of the same complicated, infuriating, impossible person she'd never stopped loving. "One condition," she said. "Anything. No more secrets. No more protecting me from things I have a right to know. No more making decisions about us without me. If we do this, if we really do this, we're equals, partners, in everything. Partners, he agreed, in everything. He pulled her close, and she let herself melt into the embrace she'd dreamed about for 7 years. He smelled like expensive cologne and coffee, and something underneath that was purely him, a scent that felt like coming home. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "I loved you in Florence. I loved you every day in between, and I'll love you every day after this if you'll let me." "I love you too," she whispered back. "I hate that I love you. I tried so hard not to, but I do." "That's a start." They stood there, holding each other in his glass office, while Manhattan glittered 53 floors below, and for the first time in 7 years, the weight on Tina's chest lifted. By 5 o'clock, the news had spread through the building like wildfire. Morgan Blackwood had ended his engagement. His secretary, former secretary, soon-to-be VP, was the reason. Victoria Ashford had resigned, effective immediately, citing personal reasons and a desire to pursue other opportunities. The press would get hold of it by tomorrow, the gossip sites by tonight. But in Morgan's office, as the sun set over Central Park and painted the sky in shades of gold and rose, none of that mattered. Jamie knocked on the door, poking his head in with a grin. "Victoria's fabricated evidence has been dismantled. It confirmed the emails came from an external source, not Tina's actual account. The bank deposits were traced to one of Victoria's shell companies. She was sloppy, probably because she was rushing." He paused. "Also, the board wants to see you both tomorrow at 9. They're prepared to issue a formal apology to Ms. Hayes and discuss the VP position." "Thank you, Jamie. And Morgan, about damn time." Jamie's smile widened. "We all knew you were miserable with Victoria. Some of us even had a betting pool on how long until you snapped. I just won $500, so thank you for that too." After he left, Morgan turned to Tina with a sheepish expression. "My staff was betting on my personal life. Your staff knows you better than you thought. Apparently." He moved to his desk, picked up the photograph she'd never been able to see clearly. "I want to show you something." He handed it to her. In the silver frame was a photograph of Florence, specifically the Ponte Vecchio at sunset, golden light reflecting off the Arno River. And in the corner, barely visible, 2 figures stood close together, silhouetted against the dying light. "I kept it," Morgan said quietly. "Every day for 7 years, it was the first thing I saw when I sat at this desk. A reminder of what I'd lost, what I'd given up, what I was still fighting for, even when I didn't think I'd ever get it back." Tina traced the frame with her finger, emotion welling up. "You could have called, written, found me somehow." "I know, and I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting you, but really I was just afraid. Afraid my father's threats were real. Afraid Victoria's manipulation would destroy you. Afraid that if I reached out, I'd drag you into a mess you didn't deserve." He took the frame back, set it carefully on his desk. "But I'm not afraid anymore." "What changed?" "You did. You walked back into my life and refused to run when things got hard. You stood up to Victoria. You chose to fight instead of hide." His eyes met hers. "You reminded me who I used to be, who I still could be if I was brave enough." The sun had fully set now, and Manhattan's lights began to sparkle like earthbound stars. 53 floors below, the city pulsed with life. Millions of people living their own dramas, their own love stories, their own battles between duty and desire. "So what happens now?" Tina asked. "Now?" Morgan pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "Now we take it one day at a time. Tomorrow we face the board. Next week we deal with the press. Next month We figure out if VP of Cultural Development is really what you want, or if there's something else you'd rather do. And through all of it, the scandal, the gossip, the people who'll say we're making a mistake, we do it together. Together, she echoed. Partners. In everything. He kissed her then, slow and sweet and full of promises neither of them were afraid to make anymore. It tasted like second chances and hard-won freedom, like Florence and Manhattan combined, like everything they'd lost and everything they might still find. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and smiling, Morgan said, "Stay with me tonight. Not here. My place. Let me cook you dinner. I've gotten better since Florence, I promise. And let's just be. No company, no drama. Just us." "I'd like that." They left the office hand in hand, ignoring the stares and whispers from the few staff members still working late. Let them talk. Let them gossip. Let the whole city know that Morgan Blackwood had chosen love over obligation, heart over empire. In the elevator, surrounded by mirrors that multiplied their reflections infinitely, Tina leaned against Morgan's shoulder and felt something she hadn't felt in 7 years. She felt home. Not in a place, but in a person. In the man who'd broken her heart and spent 7 years trying to find his way back. In the partner who'd finally stopped running and started fighting. "Hey," Morgan said softly, tilting her chin up. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me, for coming back, even though you didn't know you were coming back, for being brave enough for both of us when I couldn't be." He kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. "For being you." The elevator chimed, doors opening to the marble lobby where their story had collided 1 week ago. 1 week. It felt like a lifetime. It felt like no time at all. As they stepped out into the October night, where autumn wind carried the scent of possibility and new beginnings, Tina squeezed Morgan's hand. "We're going to be okay," she said. Not a question, a declaration. "Better than okay," Morgan replied. "We're going to be extraordinary." And watching them walk away, the CEO who'd chosen love over power and the woman who'd refused to be broken, no one could deny that for once a Manhattan fairy tale might actually have a happy ending, or at least a happy beginning. Morgan's penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a pre-war building in Tribeca, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered 360-degree views of Manhattan. It was nothing like Tina had imagined, not the cold, minimalist space she'd expected from a corporate CEO, but something warmer, more lived in. Books lined built-in shelves. Art covered the walls, including, her breath caught, a small watercolor of the Ponte Vecchio that she recognized from a gallery in Florence. "You bought it," she whispered, moving closer to examine the painting. Morgan shrugged out of his suit jacket, loosening his tie. 2 months after I left. I called the gallery, had them ship it. The owner remembered you, said you'd come in every week to look at it but could never afford the price. It was €800. I was a broke intern. I paid 3,000 and told them to lie about selling it if you ever asked. He moved to the open kitchen, pulling ingredients from a professional-grade refrigerator. I know it's creepy, but it was the only piece of Florence I could keep. Tina touched the frame gently. In the painting, the bridge glowed in sunset colors, and tiny figures crossed it, their faces indistinct, but their closeness unmistakable. It's not creepy, it's romantic. Sad, but romantic. That's been my life for 7 years. Sad, but romantic. Morgan pulled out a cutting board, began chopping vegetables with surprising skill. I meant what I said about getting better at cooking. Turns out when you're miserable and can't sleep, learning to make perfect risotto gives you something to focus on at 3 in the morning. What else did you learn at 3 in the morning? French, Portuguese, how to restore vintage motorcycles, origami. I'm terrible at it, but I tried. Basically anything to keep my mind occupied so I wouldn't think about you. He glanced up, knife pausing mid-chop. It never worked, for the record. You were always there. Tina moved to the kitchen island, slid onto a leather bar stool. Tell me about your mother. Morgan's hands stilled. For a moment she thought he might deflect, change the subject. Then he set down the knife and met her eyes. Elena Blackwood. She was extraordinary, half Italian from a village in Tuscany. That's why I went to Florence. I was trying to find her family's roots, understand where she came from. His voice softened. She was the only person in my family who believed I could be something other than Alexander Blackwood's heir. She wanted me to travel, explore, find myself before the empire swallowed me whole. She sounds wonderful. She was. And when she got sick, when the cancer came back aggressive and fast, she made me promise I'd fight. Not for the company, for my own happiness, for the life she'd wanted me to have. He picked up the knife again, continued chopping with precise, controlled movements. I broke that promise. For 4 years, I broke it every single day, until last week when you walked back into my life and reminded me what fighting for happiness actually looks like. Rain began to fall outside, drops streaking the massive windows like tears. The city blurred into impressionist streaks of light and shadow. Tina watched him cook. This man who'd been a broke graduate student and a billionaire CEO, who'd run from love and finally stood his ground, who'd broken her heart and was now carefully, hopefully trying to mend it. What would she think of us? Of this? Morgan smiled, and it reached his eyes for the first time all evening. She'd say I was an idiot for waiting 7 years. She'd probably like you better than me within 10 minutes of meeting you. And she'd be thrilled I finally escaped Victoria's clutches. She never liked her, said Victoria looked at me the way people look at expensive jewelry. Pretty to own, but not to love. Smart woman. The smartest. He cooked while she watched, the domestic intimacy strange and comfortable all at once. They talked about small things, favorite books, worst movies they'd secretly loved, places they wanted to travel. Not Florence. That would come later. For now, they needed this, the ordinary magic of 2 people learning each other again. Dinner was perfect. Mushroom risotto with truffle oil, arugula salad, crusty bread from a bakery in Little Italy. They ate at his dining table while rain pounded against the windows and Manhattan disappeared into silver mist. I have a confession, Tina said, setting down her wineglass. When I applied for the job at Blackwood Enterprises, I knew, not consciously maybe, but some part of me recognized your company, recognized the building from photos you'd shown me in Florence. You talked about your father's empire even when you were pretending to be Morgan Cross. You said it was in Midtown, that it had 53 floors, that it overlooked Central Park. She met his eyes. I think I've been looking for you for 7 years, and when I saw the job posting, something in me knew. Morgan reached across the table, laced his fingers through hers. I'm glad you found me, even if I was too much of a coward to find you first. You're not a coward. You were just lost. I was, but not anymore. After dinner, they moved to the living room, where a gas fireplace cast dancing shadows across brick walls. Tina curled into the corner of a butter-soft leather sofa, and Morgan sat beside her, close but not touching, giving her space to choose. She chose to lean into him, let his arm come around her shoulders, let herself sink into the warmth and solidity of him. What happens at the board meeting tomorrow? She asked quietly. Officially. They'll apologize to you, approve your promotion, and probably issue some statement about Victoria's resignation being amicable and mutual. He paused. Unofficially? There will be questions about us, about the timeline, about whether this looks like favoritism or worse. And I'll tell them the truth, that I knew you years ago, that we have history, that I ended my engagement because I was never in love with Victoria, and it was unfair to both of us to continue the charade, that your promotion is based entirely on merit and qualifications, which it is. His hand traced patterns on her shoulder. Some of them will believe me, some won't. But I own 51% of Blackwood Enterprises, which means ultimately they can complain, but they can't stop me. I don't want to be known as the woman who slept her way to the top. You won't be, because you didn't. You earned every opportunity through talent, intelligence, and sheer determination. He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. And anyone who suggests otherwise will answer to me. The rain intensified, drumming against glass like 1,000 tiny heartbeats. Lightning flickered in the distance, illuminating the city in brief, stark moments of clarity. "Stay tonight," Morgan said. "Not for... I don't expect. I just want you here. Wake up knowing you're real and not another dream I invented to torture myself." Okay. I'll stay." Relief flooded his expression. "Guest room is upstairs. Or you can take the master and I'll take the guest. Whatever makes you comfortable." Tina kissed him instead of answering. A soft, exploratory kiss that tasted like wine and possibility. When she pulled back, Morgan's eyes were dark with longing. "Or," she whispered, "we could share." "Tina, I don't want you to feel pressured." "I don't. I feel like I've been waiting 7 years to be held by you again, to fall asleep in your arms, to wake up and have you still be there." Her hand cupped his face, thumb tracing his cheekbone. "I'm not ready for everything, not yet. But I'm ready for this." They went upstairs hand in hand, to a bedroom that was all dark wood and soft linens, a king-sized bed that faced windows overlooking the Hudson River. Morgan found her one of his T-shirts, soft from 100 washings, smelling like cedar and him. She changed in the ensuite bathroom, took off her makeup, let down her hair. When she emerged, Morgan was already in bed, propped against pillows, wearing only sleep pants. The sight of him, bare-chested, vulnerable, real, made her heart stutter. She slid under the covers and he immediately pulled her close, her back to his chest, his arms secure around her waist. They fit together like puzzle pieces carved from the same hole. "Tell me something true," Tina whispered, echoing their first night in Florence. Morgan's breath was warm against her neck. "I've imagined this moment 10,000 different ways, and none of them came close to how perfect this feels. Tell me something else. I'm terrified, that I'll wake up and you'll be gone again, that this is temporary, that I don't deserve this second chance." "You're terrified." She turned in his arms, faced him in the darkness. "Morgan, I'm petrified. That 7 years is too long, that we're not the same people, that Florence was lightning in a bottle and we can't recapture it." "Then we don't recapture it. We create something new." He kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. "We build something that belongs to us now, not us then. Something stronger because it survived the worst and came back anyway." Outside, thunder rumbled. Inside, wrapped in each other's arms, Tina felt something shift, a final piece clicking into place, a wound beginning to heal. She fell asleep to the sound of rain and Morgan's steady breathing, and for the first time in 7 years, she didn't dream of Florence. She didn't need to. She was already home. The board meeting was exactly as uncomfortable as predicted. 12 executives in expensive suits asking polite but pointed questions about timing, propriety, and optics. Tina answered each one with calm professionalism, her credentials speaking louder than any gossip. By noon, She'd been officially appointed Vice President of Cultural Development, with a salary that made her grandmother's diamond studs look like costume jewelry, and an office on the 52nd floor with views almost as spectacular as Morgan's. By evening, the press had their story. Blackwood CEO ends high-profile engagement, promotes former secretary. The comment section was predictably vicious, but Tina had learned long ago not to read them. What mattered was the email from the Museum of Modern Art, requesting a meeting to discuss potential partnerships. The call from a gallery in Soho, interested in her consulting on their new contemporary wing. The message from Susan saying simply, "Proud of you, drinks to celebrate." What mattered was Morgan appearing at her office door at 6:30 with takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant, and a smile that said he'd been counting the hours until he could see her again. They ate dinner in her new office, sitting on the floor because her furniture hadn't arrived yet, surrounded by boxes and possibility. "How does it feel?" Morgan asked, twirling pad thai around his fork. "Surreal. Wonderful. Terrifying." She laughed. "Like everything else in my life right now. Want to know a secret? Always. I'm terrified too. Every morning I wake up convinced this is a dream, and I'll open my eyes to find myself still engaged to Victoria, still miserable, still trapped in a life I never wanted." He set down his food, took her hand. "But then I see you. And I remember that the best things are worth being terrified for." Very philosophical for a ruthless CEO. "I contain multitudes." His thumb traced her palm. "Also, Jamie's throwing a party this weekend. Nothing fancy, just friends at his place in Brooklyn. He wants to officially meet the woman who broke his best friend out of prison. Prison. His words, not mine, but accurate." Morgan's expression turned serious. "It'll be the first time we're out publicly as whatever we are. Couple feels premature. Partners feels too professional. Co-conspirators in corporate drama. How about just Morgan and Tina? I like that better." They finished dinner while the sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of coral and gold. From her new office, Tina could see the park, the buildings, the endless sprawl of possibility that was New York City. 7 years ago, she'd stood in Florence with her heart in pieces, convinced she'd never feel whole again. Now, sitting on the floor of her corner office with the man who'd broken and rebuilt her, she felt something she'd thought was lost forever. She felt happy, not the desperate, clinging happiness of new love, but something deeper, more stable. The happiness of two people who'd survived the worst and chosen each other anyway. "Morgan? Thank you. For fighting. For choosing me. For not giving up when it would have been easier to stay trapped." He pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for being worth fighting for, and for teaching me that love isn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." They stayed like that, wrapped in each other while the city glittered below, and Tina thought about second chances, about how the best love stories weren't the ones that never had obstacles. They were the ones where the obstacles made the love stronger, deeper, more real. 6 months later, spring arrived in Manhattan with all the subtlety of a revolution, trees exploding with blossoms, the park turning impossibly green, the whole city shaking off winter and stretching toward the sun. Tina stood in the sculpture garden of the Museum of Modern Art, overseeing the installation of a new exhibit she'd helped curate, a collaboration between Blackwood Enterprises and emerging artists from underserved communities. It was the first major project of her cultural development division, and it had exceeded every expectation. "Ms. Hayes," one of the installers called, "where do you want the Basquiat-inspired piece?" "Center position, please. It should be the first thing visitors see." Her phone buzzed. "Morgan, Finish the Tokyo call early. Meet me at our spot." She smiled, typed back, 20 minutes. Their spot had become the bench near Bethesda Fountain, where they'd had their first real date. Not as boss and secretary, not as ex-lovers trying to navigate impossible terrain, but as Morgan and Tina, two people learning how to build something new from old foundations. She found him already there, loosened tie, sleeves rolled up, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. The past 6 months had been transformative, not just for their relationship, but for him. He smiled more, laughed easily, took Sundays off to explore the city with her. He'd become the man he was supposed to be before duty and fear had buried him. "Hey," she said, sliding onto the bench beside him. "Hey yourself." He pulled her close, kissed her thoroughly, unhurried, not caring who saw. "How's the exhibit?" "Perfect. We open next week." "I'm terrified and excited, and pretty sure I'm going to throw up from nerves at some point. You're going to be extraordinary, as always." They sat in comfortable silence, watching tourists pose for photos with the fountain, street musicians playing for coins, the endless dance of humanity that made New York feel alive. "I have something for you," Morgan said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Tina's breath caught. "Morgan, it's not that, not yet." He opened the box to reveal a key. "It's a key to my place. Our place, if you want it to be. No pressure, but I want you to know you always have a home with me. Whether you use the key every day, or just on weekends, or never, it's yours." She took the key, feeling the weight of what it represented. "I want to. Use it every day, I mean. I want to wake up next to you and argue about who makes better coffee and steal your t-shirts and build a life that's ours." His smile could have powered the city. "Yeah? Yeah. There's more." He pulled out his phone, opened an email. "The Florence office of Blackwood Enterprises needs a cultural development consultant for 6 months. Someone to help them integrate art into their new headquarters, establish relationships with local galleries, create community programs." He met her eyes. "I thought maybe we could go back, together this time, face the ghosts, make new memories, see if we can find those 2 kids who fell in love and bring them home." Tears pricked Tina's eyes. "You'd go back to Florence after everything?" "With you, I'd go anywhere. Florence, Tuscany, the moon." He cupped her face, thumbs brushing away the tears that had started to fall. "I spent 7 years running from my past. I'm done running. I want to walk straight into it, hand in hand with you, and prove that we're stronger than what tried to break us." She kissed him then, deep and thorough and full of promises about Florence and forever and all the beautiful possibilities that lay ahead. When they broke apart, both breathless and smiling, Tina said, "When do we leave?" "June 1st, if you want." "I want." Around them, spring bloomed in impossible colors. Tourists laughed, musicians played, the fountain sparkled in afternoon sun. And 2 people who'd lost each other and found their way back sat wrapped in each other's arms, proof that some love stories don't end where you think they do. Sometimes they just pause, waiting for the right moment to begin again. And when that moment comes, when you're brave enough to reach for it, fight for it, refuse to let fear write your ending, the second chapter can be even more beautiful than the first. Because it's earned. Because it's real. Because it's yours. Morgan and Tina left the park hand in hand as the sun began its descent, painting the city in shades of gold and promise. They had 6 more weeks in Manhattan before Florence. 6 weeks to keep building their life, their partnership, their love story that had survived 7 years of separation and come back stronger. Behind them, the fountain sparkled. Above them, spring sky stretched endless and blue. Ahead of them, the city glittered with possibility. And in that moment, walking through Central Park with the man she loved and a future she'd fought for, Tina Alessandra Hayes knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was home, not in a place, in a person, in a choice she made every single day to show up, to fight, to love despite the fear and because of it. And that was worth every broken piece, every tear, every moment of doubt. That was worth everything.